All right, folks, it's time for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mecky. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Take it away, guys.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mecky on unmute.
Good on you. We are coming to you live from the Sydney studios as part of one piece of the puzzle on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. You can talk to us in the chat room while we're on air. We are live, by the way. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook to get updates between shows. And check out shinysideout.net for our show archives, show notes, and links we paste into the chat during the show. Get one of these apps for your smart device. Revolution Radio, TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com, or go and visit radiotuna.com. You can also purchase a Grace Tabletop Radio, or what we prefer you do is go into the freedomslips.com chat room. Jump in there, jump into the chat room. And chat to us while we're on air. You can ask us questions. We'll answer you. One, because there's two people on the show, so one of us can be answering, one can be talking. But if you have something to contribute, please call in on 347-688-2902 if you're in the US. Or if you have Skype, you can just simply add Freedom Screen. Thanks to Solaris once again. You know what? I'm just glad she warms up the crowd for us, Mecky.
Darn tootin'. Yeah,
we love your work.
You're great, and you're very prolific on Facebook. So if you guys are unaware of that, you can actually see her on Facebook if you find her. But be aware, she does have some pretty good content.
Yes, absolutely. And what show are we doing today?
80. That's 4 times 20 or 8 times 10. Just 20 short of 100, I think. So.
It is, exactly. You know, your maths are impeccable.
Wow. Hurrah for me. No, it's astonishing, though. 80 shows. That's something, right?
Hey, Mecky, I'm going to say this. I'll wait until the 99th show. But when I first brought this up with you, can you... Jump room. Yeah, jump room, Narara. I love that. Thanks, Tones. Jump room. You know the thing... I've been. Do you know, Mecky? When I first rang you up and I said, "Dude, I think I've got a gig on a radio station." Did you think we'd get to 80 man so far?
I didn't think we would make it through the first one, to be honest with you. I remember the show notes for the first show we had. Literally, it was just a few dot points. Talk about this, talk about that, introduce ourselves. And I think the largest or the longest show notes we produced thus far is 100 pages when we talked about the flood myths. So, No, look, dude, I know, 89. One, I was thinking of, maybe if we get through one and they don't hate us, let us have another one. But it's been pretty good. It has been amazing. And in fact, it certainly helped myself and Dave in our research. So I'm sure it gave Dave impetus to publish his book, right? Am I right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And certainly me, it's given me a whole bunch more of, I guess, facts and data which I needed for my book, which I've been procrastinating over. And I've always figured, how can I write this book? Because there's a protagonist in the book that is coming in contact with people like us that are, I guess, conspiracy theorists, if you will. And I had the hardest time to figure out how this guy who is a private eye in my book, well, when it's ever written, would meet this person. And then Dave called, which is over a year ago now, and goes, how about doing a radio show? What do you think? I go, okay. And it has worked out really great. It's a great network of people on here. And for the first time, there's actually, I guess, life trying to help Art along in how my private eye in the book would meet someone like Dave and I to help him along with the conspiracy theories and whatnot. So yeah, so this has been unbelievable, Dave, I think.
Yeah, you're right, and anything to get your book along, man.
Yeah, I've been. Yeah, I know. This is okay for our listeners. This is a book I've said I would write probably 15, 20 years ago. Now, of course, it has matured. The information is a lot more concrete, and I can tell you the information is a lot scarier than I thought it would be all those years ago. It's it's a scary world, and let's talk about this scary world for a bit, Dave.
Yeah, please let me.
Yes, please.
I'm going to hold back quite a bit because I've already put a YouTube clip out talking about all the latest news on Syria. But I wanted to just let everyone know that if you're not aware, that to be honest, the US has been talking about the bill that they're going to be putting through Congress, Meki, on Monday their time,
yep.
Tuesday our time, right?
Yep.
And this bill, to get it right, to get it passed as soon as possible, has already been altered 50 times. 50. 50. 5 and 0. Right? 50 and 0. Right? Times to get it right so it passes on the first go. And that's astonishing that they've basically just designed it with like a group of people so that it will get passed. But one of the things I've been watching on the TV, right, is they had a decorated general being asked questions by Congress. And the question was, what is your expectation for the result of this action?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the question basically boiled down to, and I'm free-forming here, but it was, what do you expect to get from this? Like, what are we going to be doing? What's the result?
Yeah.
And he said he actually refused to answer the question. Now, that's a dangerous thing from a general's point of view. He should have been extremely concise and said, actually, just to do what the president wants, yeah? Just a bit of payback. Let's just do some payback, yeah? Whatever. He didn't. He left it so open, refused to do it. It looked like what he was trying to hide from the information was that it was classified.
Yeah.
But he didn't use those words. He didn't stand on the soapbox and then hide the papers behind his back going, oh, can't really tell you. Sorry. He didn't do that at all. And it was, it was only like in the last hour, our time. In an hour ago was when I saw this clip, and I was like, no, please, whatever you do, don't do this, yeah?
And the thing is this, and you would probably say, well, so what? It happened in Iraq and happened in Afghanistan. So what? So now it's going to happen in Syria, right? Now there's a marked difference here, because Russia, as well as China, but specifically Russia, are very much on the Syrian government's side. They have asked the question as to whether or not the government was in fact at fault, or maybe it was the rebels who were guilty. In fact, the Russians believe it was the rebels who conducted the chemical attack against the Syrian people. Now, the question is, what would happen if there were an attack, right? How far would Russia and potentially China go to defend their interests? And make no mistake, they have interests in the area as well, And you're right, Dave. Sorry, he just mentioned something to me in the chat between us. Iran and Israel are also a massive question, because Israel rather has already attacked Iran, and in fact might attack Syrian sites, where they suspect that I guess nuclear power is being produced or enriched uranium and so forth. So the entire region is a powder keg, and Iran and Syria are probably the linchpins, if you look at it, because they're fairly, how can I put this best? They're fairly solid countries within that region. And it took a lot to destabilize Syria the way it has been now, right? Iran is not destabilized, make no mistake. Okay, this is really key. But the problem is that we have the powerful interests of China, Russia, and the US at odds in this area. What I learned when I recently went to India, which I hadn't read here, is that China is taking control of a Pakistani seaport. Which, as you might know, is not that far away from all of this, and would give them access, therefore, to potentially strategically important points in the world, or strategically important points to America in the world. So this is a very, very important time. What also worries me about this is that Stan Deo was on our show some weeks ago and mentioned October specifically. Now, he said something is going to go down in October, and it's probably going to be in the area we're talking about. That's why this particular thing is so sobering. It is no longer just I guess, an attack on Iraq. I mean, Iraq could have been justified because they were the aggressors against Syria. And now the same kind of justification is trying to be built, or people are trying to build it against Syria. You know, again, I'm not convinced that the Syrian government conducted the chemical attack against its people. Some analysts claim because it was so well organized, you know, and so precise that it may well have been done so. But what if other outside interests out of Syria had arranged for the attack to happen in aid of the rebels, or in fact, forget about the rebels, forget about the Syrian government. This is all about the outside interests, right? Let's bring the Syrian government down. Why? Well, if we do that, we have much easier time toppling Iran, and at that point, you have the Middle East. Okay, Iraq is gone. Saudi Arabia is already in the pockets of the United States. Jordan is inconsequential. Israel, in fact, would then be the most dominant power in the region. Egypt, all the northern African nations, they're all either in turmoil or inconsequential. So it is only Syria and Iran that are remaining true threats or potential adversaries of Israel and potentially the United States in that area. The only two left, that's it. Okay, that's what we have. Also, Syria has got a joining border with Turkey, one of the United States' most important I guess allies within NATO, in fact. So it's all set to take over the region, if you will, in my mind. What do you think, Dave?
I know completely. I've got the map up in front of me, and I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, you know, we know that the so-called terrorists of 9/11 were Saudi Arabians, they were Saudis, and America didn't attack them. That's weird. They've attacked and embedded themselves in Turkey, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Israel,
and in fact,
the only place left is Syria.
Yeah, and all the Central Asian regions. Don't forget Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan.
Oh, I know, and Turkmenistan. Yeah, that's right.
So all the like just north of Afghanistan. Yep. That's it.
The thing that I heard Chuck Hagel talking about, and I've just pasted a big chunk of stuff in our private chat between us, but there's only a couple of points from this. One is that there's 2 million of the 5 million people that live in Syria have already evacuated. Our former Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, suggested that anyone that is in Syria should leave, and that was in the week leading up to the election. Chuck Hagel admitted that the US's intention was to tip the balance in favour of the rebels in Syria.
Yeah.
Despite what Obama had been claiming was their true policy, was we're not going to get involved in their thing, right? It's their battle, rebels versus a regime, whatever. But that's not at all true. Chuck Hagel also admitted this week that they'd been training the rebels in Jordan, in Israel, right? Pulling the people over the border, training them with US weapons, and letting them keep it. Keep the weapon and go back and fight your war against the regime. And it's only because the war hasn't been won by the rebels that I think this whole thing has come about. So I think this is very dangerous. I think anyone who says that they should go in and allow, continue this stance from the US to be the world police, I think it's a dangerous thing. And, I wouldn't want, whatever the outcome is going to be, we don't want it.
You said something very interesting just now, world police. I remember a picture or front page of Time magazine, this goes years back, where the US was depicted as Globocop, in reference, of course, to the movie RoboCop. And I spoke to a number of Americans over the last week, coincidentally, and then our conversation strayed to this kind of topic as well. And most Americans couldn't care less. They don't want to be Globocop. Americans really don't want to go out and die and and kill in other countries and other nations. Not really. It's not something that Americans like. I'm talking about the American people here, right? It is the again, this is going to sound terribly horrible. But it's the power elite that is interested in the oil, in ancient artifacts, Dave and I believe, I guess, ring fencing, if possible, or isolating China and Russia from the rest of the world. And make no mistake, I've been around this year a lot now, and I realized that neither China, nor India, nor even Russia need the West. We've got a terribly skewed view of the world. It's a Western view, and it is not reflective of the reality, okay, of the world. We have a very limited understanding of world politics, and we've got a very limited understanding of world history and what actually goes on right now. We have a very limited view, guys, okay? This is all of us in the West who watch the news as they come out. You know, BBC News, Fox, CNN, I don't care. I don't want to, make anybody, I don't want to, single anyone out. Even, interestingly, Al Jazeera, which was a fairly independent station, but now came into some money. And if you notice, almost all reports that you get from all over the world are usually done by Al Jazeera reporters.
That's right.
It's like the rise of CNN after the first Gulf War. Same thing with Al Jazeera. So, and I found that RT, Russian television, if you get a chance to watch it, I watched it in my hotel room in India, in fact, this week.
I watch a lot of it.
It's fascinating because it gives you a very different view of the world, right? I'm not saying that either one is right, but the more you know, the more inputs you have, the more likely you are, Mr. Listener, to form your own opinion. Right? That's the point I wanted to make here, because this situation, from the Western point of view, of course, let's get rid of the Syrian, I guess, tyrants, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe they're not tyrants. And make no mistake, democracy is not for everybody either. Okay?
Didn't talk to France.
Well, right?
They're socialists now, everyone.
Yeah. So democracy is a nice idea, but it doesn't work for every population, for every ethnic grouping, for every country in the world. It just doesn't, okay? And I think Iraq showed that very well. You needed a strong man, and, Saddam Hussein or someone else to hold the country together. The same thing happened in Yugoslavia when Tito died. Yugoslavia fell apart, okay? Every time a strong leader is in charge, maybe that's because there has to be a strong leader in charge, right? I'm not advocating this. I'm just talking about realities here, right?
You only need to use the skill set required to get the job done. So if it happens to be, strong leader, sure. If it's benevolent, fine. Do that. Be whatever it takes. Mackie, I'm just going to say that I just zoomed out on the map. Only to discover more countries that have already been invaded,
right,
by the US,
and
all the wars. Listen to the name: Libya, Sudan, Egypt. What's happening in Egypt? It's only across the border.
Yeah,
it's across the waterway.
Yeah,
we've heard of Yemen already. It's the whole thing. They keep saying this, and so did Bashar. He said it's a powder keg. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The whole Middle East area is certainly, it requires control, and I think whoever is in charge, and remember Saddam Hussein, up until the very minute he was declared an enemy, was buying arms from the US.
They were buddies. If they've got a terribly short memory when it comes to friendship,
Yeah, exactly.
Go on, yeah.
And anyway, he did a tremendous. I think he did a tremendous job, because once you remove the power, then it's a struggle for someone else to be standing in the place.
100%, and the country broke into three. But the thing is this: there's a couple of things I want to mention here. You all know the Afghani Taliban, right? The terrible Taliban and the fighters, in the mountains. In the 80s, those guys we called them Mujahideen. Yeah, freedom fighters for God and all these wonderful things. And the Americans thought they're the most wonderful thing in the world, fighting the Russians. They're the same guys. Same guy, different shirt, right?
Yeah, that's right.
and there was a Rambo movie made helping them, this, that, and the other. Now, again, it's exactly like 1984. Where we're changing history now. No, history is what we say it is. The truth is what we say it is. And people don't want to remember this. I remember an interview just after 9/11 it was, or after the invasion of Afghanistan, where somebody actually asked this very question of an American official. It might have been an ambassador. And he goes, no, on Fox News. We don't bring up the past. We don't want to remember this. That's irrelevant. We have to deal with the realities now. True to a point, but you actually supported those guys, right? You sent them the weapons, and all wonderful things happened
yesterday.
Because US. That's right. So this is really where we're at with this. It's a situation which is dangerous. It's a situation which is real, and it's something that we cannot ignore. All right, it's something that you have to realize. So, and look at the world as it is, as a reality. All right, democracy works very poorly at the best of times.
Yeah, and look, all I'm suggesting is that I hope that Congress say no, and I hope that Obama says no, and I do support the stock that Tones brings to this. He mentions a lot of stock, because I'm buying a lot of stock in October, and that there being something happening. I don't know, and like I said, I don't know. It's not my October; it's everybody's October. Good luck with whatever's happening. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, and guys, don't get too hung up on October. These things are in development, and the first thing that you realize when you're on a battlefield is that all battle plans go out the window as soon as the first bullet is fired. One thing I would like to mention, which I've mentioned before we go on to discuss something else,
what's that?
Is that I need you to look at the situation of the world today and compare it to what it was like just before 1914 and 1939. The situation that we face today in the world is actually a combination of those two historical situations. Number one, 1914. What happened just prior to that? The old order was slowly dying. The British Empire was the old established power. The Russians, to some extent as well, they were sort of ailing, but certainly the British Empire was seeing its sun set finally. And emerging power, which was Germany, was challenging its naval supremacy. They were building, massive ships. They were also looking for their own place in the sun, they called it. So they came late to colonization. The English, the French, and so forth had already been there, but the Germans were nonetheless also trying to get into Africa. They had into the Pacific as well, not so much into South America, but and into Asia to some extent. So that's what the Germans were trying to do. And look at the situation today. You've got China, a rising power. Probably the most prominent power. Russia, oddly enough, in a similar situation again, where not quite a superpower, but you can't dismiss Russia either. So still forced to be reckoned with. And America. I'm not saying that America is declining necessarily in all its aspects. Certainly, it's still a world leader in some areas, but America
has a massive population as well.
Well, it does, but the problem is that America is declining in all the important areas economically, right? In the field of education. In the field of just civic and civil harmony. People are living in the streets. Houses, 1 million houses were foreclosed during the, not recent, but during the financial crisis. So there's a lot of poor people, a lot of beggars, a lot of discontent, a lot of unemployment as well, right? Which leads me to the situation prior to World War II. Prior to World War II, the world had just gone through a massive depression, okay? Now, I'm not arguing that we've just gone through a depression, but we've gone through a number of massive recessions. Okay, and by no means have we recovered yet. So it's a global issue, financially, economically, similar to just prior to World War II. And you've got a lot of unemployment, a lot of discontent. We've also seen a rise of the extremes, either the far left or the far right, actually gaining power in a lot of parliaments in the world, across the world. Europe, Africa, Americas, even in Asia. Okay, so there's the movement along to the extremes. Because in extreme situations, at extreme times, you're looking for extreme answers. You're looking for strong leadership, right? And if you've got a very simple platform like, kill everybody else, then that's very strong leadership that could be drawn from that. So it's a powder keg. And realize that the situations are almost identical both to just prior to World War I and just prior to World War II. Okay,
exactly.
And this is not good.
Now, the other thing that has to be weighed in this, and I brought it up before about France turning to socialism. It's one step away from democracy and one step away from, what was it, Mickey?
Anarchy.
No, the other one. Communism.
No, well, anarchy.
Well, okay.
I'll explain what I mean.
It could go in any direction.
Yeah.
All right? But they chose that. They said, well, I don't think democracy quite works the way we want it to, and it takes a certain personality type of nation to be able to accept the socialist structure or a democracy or communism. These would be great, and certainly we've just changed government for apparently no reason whatsoever.
But have you really? Okay. Good.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They both stand in the same spot.
Yeah.
There's no left or right really, except that putting it as politely as possible. We voted for this, and this is our own doing, and this is what we do. This is democracy. But we're ruling ourselves by currency. And I don't think that that's working at the moment, because as soon as you have a downturn, because it relies on there being money in the money wheel or the money go round, the moment that you start to lose employment, you start to lose tax revenue, and then you can no longer afford as a government to buy all those things for everybody. Then you have to start borrowing money. It's not your fault that you're a government, that you have to provide the things you've promised, or the things that just are the background noise that you've got to provide every single day. They're not going to go away. In fact, health requirements go up the more unemployment you have, because people can't afford themselves to have good health. So these kinds of things, it's very important. And the government, certainly through this election in Australia, was very critical of the other government doing a bad job, but they didn't have a GFC.
Yeah.
And they don't have the rising decline of the white collar worker.
Yep.
Which is what America has just gone through, and we're still seeing the same thing. So people who were office workers are now working in Starbucks. Accountants are now working. What's the other huge chain? Costco workers. Yeah. So, and because they used to be on full-time work, and now they're not on full-time work, they're on part-time or reduced hours work, and they don't have all the same privileges, and there's a lack of health cover now because they're not under their same contract. I see all of these things end up being contributing factors towards the lessening money in the money go round, and the government's inability to be able to spend money on things. But they still hand it out in election time, don't they, Mackie? They hand out all these presents to everyone. We'll buy this, we'll do that. But we know they've got none of the money.
How are you going to afford that? I'm not sure.
I don't know. My wallet's in the car.
Hot dog, not again. How do you get it by? Oh, I manage.
Is that a good siren?
I don't know.
All right, so look, let's just use that as a segue to... we've done half an hour, I reckon.
We have.
I've done enough news. I think people are almost Syria'd out.
Yes, I think.
We on Friday, Mackie, the paper was on 39 pages of elections here in Australia, and on page 40 was a half-page story. Most of it was picture, one line underneath about Syria. That was it.
Yeah, look, that's the attention span that people have these days.
Yeah, unless it happens the same day you hear about the news, people have forgotten about it.
Yeah, and the one crazy thing which I really abhor is the statement that the media makes. Unofficially, if it bleeds, it leads. And, unless there's fresh blood, they're not really interested anymore. There's one thing I would like to say, though, before we move on about the election here. Number one, I think the fact that we don't have any strong polar opposites in Australian politics is because we have it really good here. Everybody is doing relatively well. We don't have the same social issues that other parts of the world have. Mm-hmm. That's really important to remember. So there's poverty and there's hardship, but it's not on the scale that you would even find in the States, and certainly not on the scale that you find in third world nations. Secondly, if you are making a choice in a box, then all the choices you can make are contained within that box, and that's the system we have in Australia, the Westminster system, the most horrible system I can imagine. But essentially, all our political choices live in that box. So it's Liberal or Labour, or coalition, with Democrats, or maybe, the Greens, or whatever. But it's not really a choice. It's a box that's given to you, which has got a whole bunch of stuff in it, but you can't look outside that box. So that's our problem here. But you're right, though. Let's maybe not depress people with reality too much anymore.
We held the mirror up, and I think it's shattered of its own accord.
It has. We are talking today, or what we want to talk to you about, and we won't finish it today. There's too much information, so we're probably going to drag into next week as well, about Yeti, and not Yeti only, but Yeti is probably the most common incarnation, or the most commonly known creature that is facing or be the poster child for this particular phenomenon, which is the phenomenon.
I love your reference. The poster child for the phenomenon.
It is. Oh, it's good. Yeah, that looks good on a T-shirt. Mental note to self. So it's the large hominids or hominoids or cryptozoological creatures that we refer to, such as Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Alma, and Yeti, as I said, the most commonly known, probably across the world, or maybe if in the States it would probably be Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Same creature though, same phenomenon. And there's a public health warning because we don't have any hard evidence for any of this. This is, again, a lot of conjecture, a lot of theorizing, some evidence, physical and otherwise, but nothing conclusive. So, public health warning, the entire show is a tinfoil head zone. No disrespect to the Bigfoot people out there. Please fasten your seatbelts, adjust your tinfoil heads, ensuring, of course, that the shiny side is correctly facing, Dave?
Outward.
Correct. And keep your arms inside your reality suspension module at all times. Otherwise, they will be snapped off at the elbows.
No flash photography either, and leave your questions until the end of the show.
Thank you very much for your cooperation. Right. Now, before we go into a closer discussion of Yeti and related phenomena, let's look at us. The species that has been classified as Homo all kinds. We are happening to be Homo sapiens sapiens, and before us there were others as well. Now, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk to you about this. Genetic studies have shown that primates diverged from other mammals about 85 million years ago, which was in the late Cretaceous period, okay? And the earliest fossils appear in the Paleocene, which is around 55 million years ago. It's a huge gap in my mind, but nonetheless, there you are, okay? And the family of the Hominidae, or the Hominidae, I should say, diverged from the gibbon family about 15 to 20 million years ago. So the main difference between, I guess, the great apes and the other apes, or monkeys, I should say, is that the monkeys have tails, and apes, or great apes, such as ourselves,
don't.
But I get to that, don't. That is exactly right, Dave. No. And 14 million years ago, they say the orangutans diverged from the Hominidae family tree to form their own little group. Now, apparently, bipedalism, walking on 2 feet, is the basic adaptation of the hominin line. And the earliest hominin that was bipedal is considered to be the Auroran or the Sahelanthropus. Now, the Sahel is actually a desert in Africa, so you can imagine where that guy came from. With Ardipithecus, a full bipedal.
Ardipithecus.
Yep, he came in somewhat later. Now, the earliest documented members of the genus Homo, our ancestors, supposedly, Homo habilis, who evolved around 2.3 million years ago, and who was the first user of tools, Homo habilis, okay? And the brains of those early hominins were about the size of a chimpanzee of today's existence. During the next millions of years, a process of brain growth happened, right? Encephalization. It's an expansion of your brain cavity. With the arrival of Homo erectus, in the fossil record, the cranial capacity had doubled to 850 cubic centimeters. To give you an idea, we are sitting around 13 to 1400 cubic centimeters on average
today
as human beings. Correct, sir. Now, that doesn't say anything about
speak
quality.
For yourself.
Yes, you have got 500,000 cubic centimeters. My brain is extra dimensional. Now, that's talking about quantity, right? It doesn't say anything about the quality of the brain, so I don't want to go into that right now. Now, Homo erectus and Homo ergaster are thought to be the first hominid to leave Africa. And then the species, us, spread throughout the world about 1.3 to 1.8 million years ago. There are other competing theories I would like to make you aware of. There's not just the out of Africa theory, there's the out of Asia theory, there's also the out of a number of different places theory. Okay?
That's right. So there's a parallel one, where everyone developed everywhere,
yep,
or out of simply Asia or out of Africa, just to help those people along there.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, it's believed that these species that we just mentioned, Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, were the first to use fire and complex tools. Now, according to recent theories, modern humans evolved in Africa, possibly from Homo heidelbergensis, Homo rhodesiensis, and Homo antecessor, which just means the human that came
the ancestor.
That's exactly right. And they migrated out of the continent some 50 to 100,000 years ago, replacing local populations.
Sorry,
you're right.
Sorry, don't. Yeah,
I know.
We don't believe in that one.
I'm with you. And they were meant to replace the local populations of the Homo erectus at that time, which are Homo denisova, Homo fiorensis, and Homo neanderthalensis. Now, you might have heard of Neanderthal. We all do. He wasn't quite the brute that we make him out to be, and a lot of our DNA still contains traces of our relative, if you will, right? So our cousin, let's call him. So we still have Neanderthal DNA. Homo florensis was recently found in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Papua New Guinea? Probably Papua New Guinea.
I think it was New Guinea.
New Guinea, which was a minute little creature, human, if you will, but certainly a hobbit. You might know him as the Hobbit recently. And then the most recent is the Homo denisova, which was, I think, only a couple of years ago that we discovered.
Where was that found?
I think it was it Russia? I'm not 100% sure. I gotta look that up for you guys. But I
thought that might, because I know there was one that was in China. Yeah,
could have been China as well, sir.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There was 3 different sizes there.
Yeah. Now, the archaic Homo sapiens, and I don't know why they call them that, apparently evolved, which is the forerunner of us, evolved between 400 and 250,000 years ago. Now, if you've listened to Dave and my show here, then you would have come across our theories of ancient humans as well. There's a lot of evidence, especially from the last century, not last, but before that 19th century archaeology, that Homo sapiens is in fact a lot older than that. And there's evidence that we had civilizations which might have well predated this even 400,000 years number. Gold chains embedded in coal, iron nails embedded in...
A lot of artifacts that were found.
Yeah.
And we've like we said, we spoke about that and the floods and everything, which were more than likely... because this is one of the other things that we talk about is the only way you can get evidence is if it's covered over quickly by non-oxygenated soil or mud or sediments to be able to be retained to be found later on. Otherwise, if dead animals left fossils everywhere, as when they died, the forest would be filled with skeletons.
That's right, and it is not.
And they're not.
In fact, I would encourage you to look up our show on fossilization and dating, where we discuss this in some detail. From a scientific point of view, there are very, 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 very few fossils found, and most of them are marine fossils. The vast majority of fossils that have been found are marine fossils. Okay, that's something important to remember. You're right, Dave. Fossils are extremely rare, and artifacts are even rarer, because you're right, if they're metal artifacts and they're left out to the elements, they will rust away, they will flake away. In fact, most of our stuff today would just disappear unless it's a massive stone monument. But everything else eventually would...
Like the pyramids.
Ooh.
I had to tie that in there somewhere.
Could it be? Could it be? Look,
hey, Meki, can I say that the recent DNA evidence,
yes, please. Yes,
suggested several haplotypes of Neanderthal origin are present among all non-African populations, and Neanderthals and other hominids as well, such as Denisova hominin, may have contributed to up to 6% of their genome to present-day humans. So anatomically modern humans evolved from archaic Homo sapiens in the middle Paleolithic. No?
Yep. Paleolithic.
Go ahead.
Paleolithic, Old Stone Age.
That's right. Yes, about 200,000 years ago. So I think that's pretty important. Also to consider the transition to behavioural modernity. With the development of symbolic culture, language, and specialised lithic technology, which is paintings and drawings, happened around 50,000 years ago, according to many anthropologists.
Yes.
Though some suggest a gradual change in behaviour over a longer time span.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, this is a theory out there, Dave, and I'm sure you're aware of it, that the only reason we developed the way we have, with language and whatnot, it came about because we used psychotropic substances. So that may have encouraged the imaginary centers of our imagination centers of our brain, and made us dream and develop language and all those wonderful things. So don't know if that's true.
Oh, I've got something else to add to that as well. Also,
Okay.
You mentioned in there before. Let me just take it back for a sec. About cooking. Now, which one was it that started cooking?
Okay,
And
that
fire. Here
that
it is.
was Homo erectus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's believed the physics of cooking
That's right.
meant that you're able to ingest your food and get more from it if you cook it rather than eat it raw. So that being able to have more protein as cooked food, and not necessarily the vegetables, but certainly the cooked meat, we're able to process it better and faster. So by being able to cook our food, it made an evolutionary, not really an evolutionary jump, but it gave us all the things around us to be able to make an extra step. Now, I'm not sure. I think that is one of the partial contributors towards this, but still, I think that we differ somewhat from the textbooks on the actual dateline.
Yeah. No, look, no, that's true. Now, think about it this way, guys, and before we digress too far, but think about it this way. Today, we are living in a world which has got a variety of different human families, if you will, with different, cultural developments. So you've got still quite primitive people living in the desert or in the jungle, fairly primitively, and you've got, the super technology guys like ourselves in the West. But at the same time, while we have this huge range within the human population, right, of culture, we also have a huge range of hominoid or hominid creatures, such as ourselves, and then we've got orangutan, gorilla, chimpanzees, bonobo, and all of those guys. So if in 100,000 years or 200,000 years, someone digs up our fossils, they would say, oh, isn't that interesting? They seem to have, we've got this orangutan skeleton next to an anatomically modern human. That's impossible. We know that's impossible because one has evolved from the other. Right, boom.
That's right.
It's close, thank you very much. Now, bear in mind that our fossil record is spotty at best. And look, great minds have tried to work on it and tried to make it what it is today. And I don't want to disrespect those scientists at all. But we seem to have left out, or we've gotten rid of the room for wonder and questioning. It's become dogma. Make no mistake, there's no dogma in this. I mean, sure enough, these fossils exist. But why is it impossible, I ask, that we did not coexist with Homo erectus? I mean, if our theories are correct, I'm saying here, right? And there's other people that believe that as well. Why is it not possible that we are coexisting with Homo ergaster? Why is it not possible that we preceded all of those guys that were, in fact, this is what Lloyd Pye in his theory says, that the current manifestation of Yeti and so forth are the actual descendants of Homo erectus and Homo antecessor and Homo ergaster, not us. It is them. Mm-hmm. We are something else entirely. We're taken out of that evolutionary tree, if you will, by an agency that may have altered us in some ways. Or we might have arrived here in a different way. But Yeti and Sasquatch and Bigfoot and Alma and all of those wonderful guys are, in some people's belief, and Lloyd Pye, who we're lucky enough to have on the show here some time ago, believe that those guys are in fact the descendants of Homo erectus and company, right? Not us.
The reason for his distinct view is because of the DNA genome count.
Correct.
So, take us there, Meki.
Well, I want you to...
in good time, of course.
Yeah, no, but I want you to also go there and find out for yourself. But before we go into that too much more, we've added a table to our show notes, which I urge you to have a look at, which gives you some idea as to what went on in the in the evolution of us. We put it down from Denisova hominin, from Homo antecessor, Homo erectus, down to Homo sapiens, modern human, where we when they alleged to have lived, where they lived, the average height, the mass, cranial capacity, and fossil record. There aren't all that. There not that many for some of them, right? So
and you can't. I played with this table quite a bit, trying to say, well, if I ignore when they lived and just sorted by cranial capacity, for instance, then all the dates were out.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't make any sense either.
Yeah.
If only we had the DNA, if we had the DNA chain to show us where these people were, that would be the only thing that would get me across the line.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, some of the cranial capacities would surprise you. So Neanderthal had an average of 1,200 to 1,900 cubic centimeters. Today we have 1,000 to 1,980 cubic centimeters. Okay, so their average was much higher than ours.
Higher than ours, yeah.
Okay, now
exactly.
And this is really, and then the Homo ergaster, as we said, reached up to 850 cubic centimeters, and I guess a contemporary, or not too far off, the Homo erectus was similarly, but the Homo antecessor reached a cranial capacity of 1,000 cubic centimeters, and that wasn't too far off from there. But there seems to be a massive jump when it came to Homo neanderthalensis and Homo heidelbergensis, right? Which were well above the 1,000 cubic centimeters.
Exactly.
So it's like with those creatures, with those cousins of ours, if you will, something seems to have happened. And again, we were talking about the interference here as well, right? We're talking about the potential theory of having an agency, I want to call it, because I don't want to,
I hear what you're saying.
Right?
I think everyone knows what we're saying.
Yeah, that interfered with the natural development, or potentially just dropped us, or creatures like us, onto this particular planet.
The cab stopped here and they let us out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you talk to any other culture apart from Western, Indian, Chinese, whatever, and especially Indian, they will tell you, oh yeah, we've been here a long time. We've been here millions of years, and nothing new under the sun, la la la. And I would have to agree with it, looking at the evidence that we have today. And I know it's only anecdotal, it's not rigid scientific evidence, because some of it has been destroyed, guys, and nobody's really looking for it either. Make no mistake, nobody's actually looking for this evidence. And if it does come up, what happens, Dave?
It gets given eventually to, it's either in a private collector's collection, and then it gets put into the storage basement, the locked, closed, lights off storage basement of some local museum somewhere. Yeah. Smithsonian, for instance.
That's exactly right? So number one, nobody's looking for it. Number two, if they do find it, they don't want to tell you about it. And number three, if you do hear about it, by some coincidence or some chance, it is dismissed either as a hoax, a misclassification, or just a simple error by the researcher. And
and that's the most important, because people's reputations are at stake.
Correct.
So the people who are sitting there on top of their pile of proof that shows that they're right, any interruption to that pile is a threat to them, and they down it straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. And which brings us to Lloyd Pine. I want to quickly just mention the DNA evidence that Dave brought up as well. So the key thing here that Lloyd Pine, others tell us as well, specifically Lloyd though, and he's done some brilliant research, is that our DNA, okay, I don't want to get too technical and get into too many details, but our DNA is a lot more closely related, or looks a lot more like domesticated animals' DNA than it does wild animal DNA. Now, what does that mean? That means we've got a lot of junk DNA. If wild animal, right, like a orangutan, chimpanzee, and all that wonderful stuff, they don't have a lot of superfluous DNA. They really don't, right? It's even though there's almost a 99% overlap between us and them in genetic material. Comparatively speaking, we have a lot more of this junk DNA, and also some redundant traits, which all domesticated animals seem to have, and oddly enough, one other animal, which is the cheetah. Okay,
yes, which is my favorite DNA
right?
discussion with Lloyd.
Which apparently seems to be a clone of itself. In fact, every single creature, you could take a liver out of one cheetah and put it in another cheetah. There'd be no rejection. You could take an eye and pop it in. If you had the surgical skills, the eye would function perfectly well. Go on.
And Mackie, if you've got the only way in a human that would work, if it's a twin, and it has to be an identical twin of yours.
Yep.
to not have rejection.
Correct. I mean,
But even your brother and sister, your family, your mother, anyone, no one can donate something without having to have anti-rejection drugs for the rest of your life.
That's exactly right, and that's the key problem with getting what do you call it? I can't think of
I
it.
don't know, where are you going?
No. Donated organs.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the key problem when it comes to this kind of thing, organ rejection. It is not that we can't put them in you and make them work. The surgery skills are, well with us these days. It is a problem that your own immune system will reject it as an alien invader. Oops, I shouldn't say that. Alien invader.
Yeah. Sorry, your body considers it an invader and wants to try and knock it out.
Yeah.
The thing that I liked about this discussion with the DNA is that we can't. Do you know how hard it is to domesticate an animal?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not easy at all. The Australian dingo is the biggest proof of that. Yes, they've been side by side with humans, bipedal humans, walking around, having fun, right? They've been there to scavenge. They've been there, in the background to the campfires and, cooking the goannas but they haven't been domesticated. They're not domesticated, and when you put them into a domestic setting, they don't behave like the family dog.
And they will try to eat you.
They will. And this is the big thing. We don't know. This is like 40,000 years that they've been side by side with humans, and yet they seem impossibly impervious to domestication.
Yes. Now that says
what does
a lot,
it take?
Right?
The question is, what does it take then to become domesticated? Do you just voluntarily give it up? Do you require genetic engineering to be able to have your wild traits removed?
Ooh, dangerous territory.
Are they just deleted? This is part of your, the junk DNA. That we've just mountains and mountains of repetition of the same DNA sequence, which doesn't appear to do anything at all. We have DNA that is dormant. It appears to have no way, shape, or form to do anything within the body. And yet there it is.
And the question is, why would something like that be kept around?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense that it would be.
Yep.
So to wrap it up, when he talked about the cheetah, he said that it's both dog and cat DNA.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
I wanted to bring that up and make sure that everyone has across this.
Just in case you don't believe it, look it up for yourselves. And the key thing here is this. Cheetahs are susceptible to both dog, canine, and cat, feline diseases. So cat-only viruses and dog-only viruses. They have a hard paw like a dog with non-retractable claws, the only cat on the planet like it. Yep.
They have dog and cat fur.
Yep.
So the short fur is one and the long fur with the spots is the other. And they have a checksum. So if you're into computers, you know what a checksum is. It's when you total up all the bits at the end that makes a number, and then when I send the package to somebody else or I have to copy it, I make sure that number's exactly the same. That's a checksum.
Yep.
Yeah? So they've got one of those, and their babies abort if they're not the right checksum, therefore giving them complete clones of themselves. And they're the only ones, the only living creature that we can find so far, which seems to be cloning itself.
There's one more sea creature, but it's a lot more primitive. But yes,
you're
right. You're right. But you're right. No, you're right.
That's a symmetrically sided creature. I know that one.
But a vertebrae, a complex organism, like comparatively
it's
speaking,
completely different.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. One more thing in relation to the cheetah. There's not a single case that I know of reported cheetah attack on a human.
Oh yes, that's right.
Okay, not happened. Never happened. In fact, there are cases where the cheetah, similar to dolphins, have helped humans, which is very strange, right? So look it up for yourselves. Don't believe me. Don't believe Dave.
The last point that don't just believe me. don't say don't believe. Don't believe Mickey. Don't just believe us. Go and have a look, and please listen to that interview we did with Lloyd.
Yeah.
The most interesting part of this was how he was able to explain the possible joining of these two DNAs together. He said it looked like it was done quickly. It wasn't perfect.
That's right.
Yeah, and that that the only reason you would do this is to create the creature for your own purpose.
Yeah.
Sort of like like a cormorant fishes for people in Malaysia.
Yeah.
The falcon will hunt and get rabbits and stuff for us. Yeah. So we feed them a little bit, but they go and get the rabbit.
That's right.
So this what's that? It's not birds of prey, but it's like a falconer. There's a term for being able to utilize a creature to do your bidding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the term is, but I know what you mean. Yes. Yeah.
So it appears as though it was one of those creatures, but how big would that creature be? And this is one of those the pre 12,500 years ago. Maybe there were giants. Maybe there were taller people. Maybe this was just like a domestic cat to them.
Right, and look, there are in fact drawings within Egyptian artifacts and monuments or whatever that show the cheetah being used as a hunting dog. Okay, and it's not far. It's not a far stretch to go then. Well, again, domestication is hard, very difficult to do. So, a creature that you don't have to domesticate, you just made that way. Think about it. And the Egyptians were masters in taking over things, I think, in my mind, that already existed. I believe the base of the pyramids existed. There was a platform there, and people just built on it, potentially, I think. I believe the Sphinx was already there. Someone just carved, Egyptian pharaoh's head on it. So, and I think the Egyptians did the same thing with the cheetahs.
It was the pharaoh.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I think we have a lot of cultures that there's no good term for it, I guess, but they're sort of like cuckoos, or they take whatever is there, attribute it to the gods, but make use of it anyway.
They inherit it.
Yeah, the entire we don't go too far afield, but we only got a few minutes, so I guess we can for the first segment. The entire casing stones of the pyramid were used to build Cairo. Okay, they took them because the pyramid was white, it had white casing stones. You saw it from miles away. They were all taken away to reveal the pyramid as it is today, and Cairo was built with those stones. The Baalbek platform, the Romans came along and just built the temple to Jupiter on it. The platform itself was there long before the Romans got there, but they utilized it because, it was there. Why not? Right? And this is really a theme that you will find throughout history, where people just take... In fact, all of the churches in Europe, the old churches are built on ancient Druidic sites, or ancient, holy sites of the old religion. Do your research. You will find there's probably a stone circle where your churches in Europe, England, Germany, it doesn't really matter where, but the churches were built on these sacred old sites. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Baalbek stones, for instance, they were absolutely ginormous, and we still can't move them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We can't think about moving them. They're too large.
You're 100% correct. 1,000 tons. How are you going to do that? Now we're coming up to the station break here, guys.
Yeah,
Don't go away.
Right on the cusp.
Yeah. Do remember it's the station. The station is listener funded, meaning you get to choose to support us. Please do. Any donation would be appreciated.
We'll see you on the other side. Hang on.
Hi, you're back with
Dave
and Mackie's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. As Hawk has just said, this is listener-funded radio, and if you like what you hear, specifically this show, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run the station. It actually does, guys. Okay, this is not just some kind of lame ad. And we are halfway through show number 88 and 0, and we're talking about Yeti, Abominable Snowman, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Alma. Dave.
Alive.
You still with me? Okay.
I had the double mute button trick.
Brilliant. Yeah, so show number 80, we spoke about that. Brilliant. Now, let's get right into this thing. Let's see what Lloyd Pye has to say about this phenomenon. And he's one of the foremost researchers of this in modern times. And like we said earlier, we had the very good fortune to interview him. And I would highly recommend that you get his books. Everything You Know Is Wrong is one of them. And you also visit his website and find our interview with him. He was full of amazing stuff. He's also the guy with the skull. I don't know if you're familiar with the
Star Child skull.
Yeah, exactly, Dave. Are you familiar with that? I hope you are, because that is fascinating, and we still need to follow up on that because there were meant to be some DNA tests coming along as well, and the DNA tests that had been done showed that the Star Child skull is further away from us than Mr. Chimpanzee. That was at the last check. Now, hominoids are technically is a member of the biological superfamily of Hominidae, which includes the great apes, humans, and several extinct ancestors and relatives we spoke about earlier. Now, this particular term of hominoid has fallen out of favor with modern scientists who want to categorize humans and the so-called pre-humans as hominin. Therefore, hominoid has been adopted to describe the controversial family of upright walking hair-covered primates that live on every continent on Earth except Antarctica. Well, potentially.
Not until we find the remnants of them.
Correct, sir. Now, you might know these primates by different names in different cultures. And again, this is Mr. Lloyd Pye speaking here. There's Bigfoot in the US, Sasquatch in Canada, again, interchangeable. Yowie in Australia, that's right. Yeti and the abominable snowman in the Himalayas, as well as Alma in Eastern Europe and in various other parts of the world. Now, there are a lot of other names. The Chinese have them as well. They're called, in Chinese, it's the wild man, or the hairy wild man of the mountain. In Africa, they have them as well, and they're called different names, usually local tribal names, because there's no widespread phenomenon reported there. It's just a local phenomenon, and mostly researchers ignore it. These ones, they haven't. Now, Bigfoot is by far the most famous, I guess. Yeah, 7 to 10 feet tall, weighing 700 to 1,000 pounds. And apparently, according to Mr. Lloyd, Mr. Pye rather, they live in the deep, dense forests that surround the Earth at high elevations in temperate latitudes. Okay, Yeti is usually human-sized, but far more robust, 5 to 7 feet tall, weighing 500 to 700 pounds, and they seem to only live in valleys of the Himalayan mountain ranges. And I tell you, those mountain ranges are massive. Okay, they're combined as large as the United States of America. Let me repeat that. The Himalayan mountain ranges have the same area, if you will, landmass, as the United States of America. Dave, which one is the next one? The
Alma.
Right.
And the captor/captor. These types are also human-sized, between, like 5 to 7 feet tall, though, and weighing about 5 to 700 pounds. They also live in dense forests around the world, but at lower elevations, so not in the snow peaks or anything like that. And it's lower elevations than like the Bigfoots, yeah, or the Squatches. They are most human-like. They are the most human-like of all of the three large types. This is Lloyd saying, and I personally suspect these types will prove to be living Neanderthals. And that's a big statement.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
What about number 4?
The Agogwe Sedapa types are pygmy-sized, and you can imagine where they are found. They seem to be living in the jungle areas of the world, just 3 to 4 feet tall. However, coming in at 200 to 300 pounds, which still puts them at much heavier than the average human being. And that is due to the fact that most of these guys have denser muscles and denser bone structures than we do. Okay, they're just more robustly built, and that goes again to the domesticated argument, where domestic animals are a lot less robust, a lot less equipped to deal with the world compared to their wild counterparts. And again, this is very, very important. Now, these creatures seem to live in small groups or tribes, whereas the other 3 types are believed to function mostly as small, independent family units. So you got the tribal structure versus the family structure. Again, that was part of the human culture as well, if you look around the world. Now, interestingly enough, that goes hand in hand with the recent find of Homo forensis, which is also about 3 to 4 feet tall, and was meant to, well, they say it's extinct. A lot of the local tribes, and this is really important, guys, right? Let's step away a moment from the Western scientific view of the world, and then let's look at people that actually know what they're doing and they live in the area where these folks are found. When I say folks, it's because I don't think they're just creatures. I think they've got sentience, and they're probably just as smart as we are. They are common, and it is common knowledge that they exist and live alongside the peoples in the Himalayas, in Africa, in jungles of Borneo, in South America, wherever these legends are coming from, and even Westerners that live in the mountains, in the Rocky Mountains as it were, or somewhere in the Canadian wilderness, they have no issue with telling you, yeah, I've seen them. They live here in Russia, the Alma as well. Yeah, we've had encounters. Sure, it's not a thing for these people, right? It's not a thing. They just accept it. It's like, oh yeah, there's carp in the river, or yeah, we have deer in the forest. Yeah, there's Sasquatch. There's Alma. Yeah, sure. It's not, again, and these are feared creatures as well. They're not benevolent, like they're portrayed by Hollywood. They will attack you. No, potentially, because we probably have attacked them. So why haven't we found anyone? Why haven't we seen anyone? Well, let me position this. We are still finding fairly large-sized mammals in the world, all over the world, right? There's this valley recently in Papua New Guinea where they found a whole ecosystem that we didn't know about, with a whole bunch of new creatures. Okay, it's true.
Yeah, it is true.
The coelacanth, which is a fish. It's a bony fish, which looks, it's fairly large, and it disappears from the fossil record at the same time as the dinosaurs. 65 million.
I was just going to say, how many million years ago? Yeah. 65 million years ago.
So, 65 million years ago, according to our dating system, is the last fossil we found of the coelacanth. Now, why is that amazing? Because we found them alive and well just off the coast of Madagascar as well, right, in the Indian Ocean. That's where they are. And the locals catch them and eat them. They're not good to eat. They say they got too many bones, but be that as it may. But it wasn't a thing for the locals. When a Western scientist came across it, it was a big hoo-ha. Oh, look at this! I found a coelacanth. Impossible. The living fossil. Blah 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 blah. Well, it is. Again, it is important to realize it is very hard for fossils to form. Number one. Number two, we don't know everything. Number three, we have not been everywhere. We know more about the side of the moon we can see than we know about the bottom of the ocean. Okay, that's a fact, guys. We're not as well versed with our world as we are. Think about your own life. All of you, think about your own life. And I'm thinking about my life here as well, and Dave. Now, we live most of our lives in cities these days, unless you're in the country, in which case you probably have come across these creatures, right? Or heard about it, or heard them in the night, or whatever it might be. But most of us live in cities, travel from city to city, and spend very little time, unless you really like camping, near nature. And even then, we're probably near a population center. I ask you, go out into the world. Go out into the real wilderness. Like this guy, what's his name? Man vs. Wild, right? That guy,
Bear Grylls.
There you go. That's the guy. Now, okay, if you, in fact, he shows you just how hard it is to survive there. That's why we don't go there. We don't go there because it's uncomfortable, okay?
It's so true.
We've spent thousands of years trying to get more comfortable. Now we don't want to go out there, People go, you camping? Yeah, sure, but you got your propane cooker, you got your tent, you got this, and you got the other. No.
Your chemical toilet.
Yeah, that's right. So now I'm talking about the real wilderness, which most of us never will go to. Siberia, right? The installation, in fact, that's going too far afield. But the point is, there are lots of places on the planet where people just don't go. And certainly no Western scientist, because it also costs money to go there, right? Time, money. Sorry.
Mickey, yeah. If I walk for 700 meters behind my house, no one goes there.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
We just, we all, I have to say, this is just a bit of a joke, but all of the singles dating scenes all around the world say everyone enjoys bushwalking. I went bushwalking and there was no one there.
Yeah, where are they all? All these people that love bushwalking, where are they? Oh, it's near a cafe, right?
Yeah, there's got to be. It's got to be. Is there a cafe there or on the way? So yeah, I am a big fan of squatching and finding Bigfoot show, and I think it's really cool and what they're doing. But all of the eyewitness accounts, and this lends itself really well to the Yeti accounts as well. Is that the topic of the show being Yetis, but Sasquatches, you're right, seem to travel in a family unit. Mm-hmm. Not tribal. There's not hundreds. It's only a single family, like parents and some kids wandering through some area to get somewhere else. It looks like they're nomadic and they just travel for the food sources. If that's if at all what they do. But the Yeti, which you'll hear about in a minute, has, and this is what I found when I was doing the research as well, is that we didn't go there at all.
That's right.
It was only the fringe people that were seeing and had tales, the folklore and the legends about this. And I hesitate to use the word myth, but they're common law and stories about all of these different kinds. Now, Meki, the Mishe,
yes,
is the Tibetan word, right? Which is a little bit weird because it's the syllables, the letters used aren't actually Tibetan, the ancient Tibetan.
No, that's right.
But that means man bear.
Yeah. In fact, there are a number of different terms the Himalayan peoples use, right?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Look, there's like Dave said, there's Mishe. There's also Tsute, which translates to cattle bear, and I guess it's referring to the Himalayan brown bear in our physiology. There's the Migoi or Migo, which simply translates as wild man. And again, the wild man translation stands true for a lot of these encounters by local peoples. So they just call them the wild man. Even the Germans have that, believe it or not. The wild man, the wild man of the forest. In fact,
what's the Nepalese one?
Nepalese is Bunmanchi.
Yeah.
Which is probably the most common name, which means jungle man. Then there's Mirka, which is another name for wild man. And apparently there's a local legend that says that if anyone sees them, or him or her, they're killed, or they die. This is coming from a statement by Frank Smythe Sherpers in 1937. So that's a gentleman who actually went there. Then there's also Kang Admi, the snowman, and Jobran, man-eater. However, the people of Nepal also call them Rakshasa, which is Sanskrit. Sanskrit, the oldest language we know of, still in existence.
Planet.
For demon, exactly right, sir. Now, one thing I need to tell you, the wild men of the north, by a different name today. Now, now the wild men of the north, as Santa Claus. Okay, I just had to mention it, because what Santa Claus is wearing is animal skin inside out. That's why it's red, it's blood. And the white is just at the cuffs, that's the outside of the fur, so against the skin. So that's the wild men of the north. Just to throw that in yet.
That's awesome.
Right? It's a bit weird, right?
I know what I'm doing next Christmas.
Now, what does folklore tell us, Dave, about these crazy Tibetans?
Crazy? Thanks for that. According to the Tibetans, though, the stories of its existence date back to the 4th century BC. BC, people! Listen. When references to the Yeti are found in a poem called Rama and Sita. The belief in these creatures is universal among Tibetans. The government of Nepal officially declared the Yeti to exist in 1961. It became their national symbol and an important source of income, of course.
How about that?
And I don't think they just jumped on board because other people thought about it, remember? We've talked about the Yeti in the Nepalese languages having the true terminology of this goes back a long way, right? Some relics are displayed in Tibetan monasteries, such as the so-called Yeti scalp.
And we're going to talk about that in a second, in fact.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and there's a few other things. There's some DNA testing as well, which was conducted, which we will also talk about. Now, apparently the habitat for the Yeti specifically is Mongolia, but also Tibet, Nepal, Pakistan, and the surrounding areas. So pretty much everywhere where we are not. Okay, that's probably the best way to put this. So you will find these cryptozoological creatures wherever we are not, because we tend to kill everything off in our area. Elephants, in 200 years, 300, might be mythological creatures because they were all killed by African farmers because they ate the crops. Anyway. That's just a sidetrack, right?
Well, that's funny because they'll see pictures of us cohabitating with elephants, and in the future they'll go, "Oh, that can't be possible. That's fraud."
Yeah,
absolutely. This is fake. No way that the humans live with them. They must have been extinct a long time. We didn't find any fossils of them.
Yeah, and this is exactly right. And look, the key thing here is, guys, like I said before, like Dave has pointed out, these creatures live in areas we don't go. Most, and this is interesting, most Caucasian women from lower altitudes can't give birth at those altitudes. Okay? Women can't. We find it difficult to breathe to go there. We can't actually go to some of these places without oxygen breathing masks. So, is it surprising that we haven't run into live specimens? No, not really. They've had a lot of time to get adjusted to us and withdraw from us as we expanded like a cancer across the world, right? And they just stay away from us. I mean, I would. Because chances are that we were no friendlier than we are today. Back, 2, 3, 5, 10,000 years ago, we would have killed them and eaten them, or just killed them.
Belonging to.
Okay.
Sorry, we had a caller and they dropped off.
Oh, okay, no worries. That was interesting. Now, as we said, these go back quite a while, and we do want to focus a little on I guess, the Western view as well. But before that, the pre-19th century history of the encounters of the Yeti. According to H. Siiger, who was, I guess, an author that delved into the Himalayan peoples and their mysteries, the Yeti was part of the pre-Buddhist belief system of the Himalayan people. Okay, this is pre-Buddhist, so this goes back 3, 4, 5,000 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is important. He was told that the Lepcha people worshipped a Glacier Being as a god of the hunt. He also reported that followers of the Burn religion once believed the blood of the rgod, like we just said, or wild men, had use in certain mystical ceremonies. The being was depicted as an ape-like creature who carries a large stone as a weapon and makes whistling swoosh sounds. Okay, as a language, I guess. So, again, it's important to realize that this goes way back.
Do you know, I've studied a lot of the Aboriginal descriptions of creatures, which are the things, what are the most likely things that you'll take, what are the take-home informationals about something? One of those is, what do they look like, how do they walk, and what sound do they make, and what weapon do they have?
Yep.
So they're very important. They don't say they had blue eyes and whistled a tune as they walked along. That's not what you'd take home. That's not a message that you want to use and store someone in your brain for when you need it. You're walking in the Himalayas and you hear a swooshing, a whistling swoosh sound. Oh, that could be something. If you see an ape-like creature holding a large stone as a weapon, aha! That's the Yeti.
Yep.
It's not going to be someone in a flight suit, smoking a pipe. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, they're very specific in the way, in being able to minimize the amount of detail you need to carry on or take home from that. So, in the 19th century, though, this changed. This changed somewhat, right? The information that's come out. What about the Yeti in the 19th century? In 1832, James Prinsep's Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal published trekker B.H. Hodgson's account of his experiences in northern Nepal. His local guides spotted a tall, not him, his guides. And who are guides?
Yeah, Sherpas.
Sherpas. They're the people who live there, right? They spotted a tall bipedal creature covered with long dark hair, sounds squatchy, which seemed to flee in fear. Hodgson concluded it was an orangutan.
Obviously.
But obviously, an orangutan isn't tall and doesn't have long dark hair.
It doesn't really walk on 2 feet, usually with the help of its hands, Anyway.
Exactly. In an early record of reported footprints appeared, reported footprints appeared in 1899 in Lawrence Waddell's Among the Himalayas. Waddell reported his guides' description of a large ape-like creature that left the prints which Waddell thought were made by a bear, right? So he immediately attempted to try and dismiss it. Waddell heard stories of bipedal ape-like creatures, but wrote that none, however, of the many Tibetans he'd interrogated on the subject could ever give him an authentic case. So it was a lot of tales and tales of other people having seen them, but no first-hand accounts is what he's trying to say here. So on the most having undergone the most superficial of investigations, it wasn't resolved into anything.
Correct,
except for hearsay.
That's right. And this is usually where these things end up anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Which is interesting. Now, having moved into the 20th century, the frequency of reports increased. Now, let's again dial back a second here. The frequency of reports known to Westerners increased. Okay, this is an important distinction, because Westerners, us, began making attempts to, climb the mountains and go there and even track these creatures. Okay,
we began adventuring.
Correct, sir. In specific hunt for the Yeti. Now, again, it's the Western view of the world that skews our understanding of the world, which is horrible. Now, in 1925, Mr. Tombasi, who was a photographer and a member of the Royal Geographical Society, writes that he saw a creature about 15,000 feet, about 4,500 meters, near Zimu Glacier. Tombasi later wrote that he observed the creature from about 200 to 300 yards. It's about 180 to 270 meters for you guys in the metric system, for about a minute. Unquestionably, he says, the figure in outline was exactly like a human being, walking upright and stopping occasionally to pull at some, bushes, rhododendron bushes, I guess, to get the berries off it. But the point is, it didn't look like a bear. It looked exactly like a human being, in proportion, I would imagine. All the limbs are in the correct proportion, because a bear does not look like a human being.
No.
Now, apparently it showed up dark against the snow, and as far as he could make out, it wore no clothes. About 2 hours later, Tombasi and his companions descended the mountain and saw the creature's prints. Described as similar. It's similar in shape to those of a man, but only 6 to 7 inches long by 4 inches wide. The prints were undoubtedly those of a biped, meaning a creature that works on 2 feet.
It's certainly as a distinct difference between a chimpanzee or a gorilla or any other creature like that.
Exactly, because most other creatures will, use four-legged mode of transport. It's faster. While attempting to scale Mount Everest is the next encounter, and we know him here, Mr. Eric Shipton, in 1951, took photographs of a number of large prints in the snow. And you might have seen them. He put his pickaxe next to it. I've got them in my books. At about 6,000 meters above sea level. 6 kilometers, 20,000 feet. These photos have been subject to intense scrutiny and debate. Some argue they are the best evidence for the existence of Yeti, while others contend the prints are those of a mundane creature that have been distorted by the melting snow. Now, if you had seen those pictures, which I have, you would see that they're made in fairly fresh snow. Now, when snow melts, it ices over. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it does ice over because it gets colder, and then it refreezes, but it no longer looks like snow. It now looks like ice. Okay, and these particular prints that I have seen in my books, they don't look like
snow.
They look like snow, sir. That's exactly right. Peter Byrne, what did Mr. Peter Byrne do, sir?
He reported finding Yeti footprint in 1948 in northern Sikkim in India, near the Zimu Glacier.
Ah, again, okay.
Now, he was on holiday at the time, though, from the Royal Air Force. That's extraordinary.
Again,
so 1948, 1951. Yeah. There's something happened in 1953.
Sir Edmund Hillary. Now, we all know him. And Tenzing Norgay, his Sherpa, who most people forget, reported seeing large footprints while scaling Mount Everest. Hillary would later discount Yeti reports as unreliable, and we can only guess at why he would say these things, but maybe someone convinced him to say this. In his first autobiography, Tenzing said that he believed the Yeti was a large ape, and although he had never seen it himself, his father had seen one twice. But in his second autobiography, he said he had become much more skeptical about its existence. Now again, it sounds like someone is getting to these guys, which reminds me of our show 2 weeks ago about the Men in Black, right? Maybe someone has a vested interest here to I guess, push us away from this, this particular train of thought.
Well, let's just, for 1 second, remember what Hillary did. He went to the top of Everest.
He did, sir.
Now, on the way to the top of Everest, if you find footprints, fresh footprints in the snow, and you're the only person there, you're climbing to the top of Everest, you have to either assume that there's someone ahead of you, therefore he's not going to be the first person there, or Tenzing for that matter, helping him, dragging his frozen carcass up the hill most of the way. Sorry, those who know or relatives of Sir Edmund Hillary. Thank you so much. But that is absolutely, completely compelling. It's more compelling than anything else. And for him to later, as Meki said, later dispute himself and that they even existed. Like, I think it's just time and old age made the memory fade.
Or some very persuasive arguments. You know, one can only wonder. However, there was an expedition that was organized by the Daily Mail in 1954, which is called the Snowman Expedition. You know, Yeti is also known as the Abominable Snowman. In fact, Tintin has also met Yeti in one of Hergé's comic books, just in case. Tintin in Tibet, yes, sir. So he believed so. So Hergé also believed that Yeti was a real creature. Anyway, at least in his comic books. The mountaineering leading that expedition was John Angelo Jackson, and he made the first trek from Everest to Kanchenjunga, and in the course of which he photographed symbolic paintings of the Yeti at Tengboshe Gompa. Jackson tracked and photographed many footprints in the snow, most of which were identifiable, as you would expect. However, there were many large footprints which could not be identified. These flattened, footprint-like indentations were attributed to erosion and subsequent widening of the original footprint by wind and particles. You know, it's swamp gas reflected.
It always happens to my footprints. Those particles, got to watch out for that.
See, it's look, again, Occam's razor, I get it. You know, the simplest explanation is always the correct one, or most likely the correct one. However, who determines what the most likely explanation is? Who says what our yardstick is? Isn't the most likely explanation that it could very well be a large ape? No, it's much more likely that the bullet turned in the air. Okay, so
JFK reference.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm sorry. I mean, who determines what Occam's razor is? I would like to know. I would like to know who has that job. Anyway, let's keep going before we again, Dave, with the Daily Mail, right?
Yeah, on the 19th of March, 1954, the Daily Mail printed an article which described expedition teams obtaining hair specimens. Finally, something solid from what was alleged to be a Yeti scalp found in the Pangbosh monastery. The hairs were black to dark brown in colour in dim light. Everything looks dark in dim light. Why would they put a bright light? Certainly they have access to bright light. And fox red in sunlight. Oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. The hair was analysed by Professor Frederick Woods Jones, an expert in human and comparative anatomy. Mm-hmm. So during the study, the hairs were bleached, cut into sections and analysed under microscopes. The research consisted of taking micro photographs of the hairs and comparing them with hairs of known animals. This is done in forensic cases. Where they slide the photo beneath it. So they cut the photo into two, basically, and they slide others until they can find a match, such as bears and orangutans. Jones concluded that the hairs were not actually from a scalp. He contended that while some animals do have a ridge of hair extending from their... It was not pate. Pate mm-hmm. to the back. Is it like the back of the neck?
Head. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Top of the head, okay.
Yep.
No animals have a ridge, as in the Pangbosh scalp found, running from the base of the forehead across the pate and ending at the nape of the neck. Oh, I see where it's coming from the top to the back. Yeah.
That's it, sir, yep.
Wow, so really that was his whole argument. That there was...
However...
Jones was unable to pinpoint exactly the animal from which the Pangbosh hairs were taken. He was, however, convinced that the hairs were not of a bear or anthropoid ape, which is very, very interesting. He suggested that the hairs were from the shoulder of a coarse-haired, hoofed animal.
Now, I would like to say here that I've actually looked, and I can't find why he would have come to that conclusion. Well, no. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's okay to make a statement like that.
You have to make a claim, yeah.
Yeah, and then explain, why the follicle types are wrong, or maybe the hair fragments didn't quite fit that type, or whatever. I mean, whatever it is, I would like to have known. But even if, let's say, fine, forget about the Pangbosh hairs. Fair enough. There's some other interesting. But having said that, I still am not convinced that they weren't. Anyway.
What happened in 1957 then?
However,
3 years later.
Yeah, exactly. In 1957, a wealthy American oil billionaire, in fact, Tom Slick, cool name.
I wonder if he changed his name.
Because it's Oil Slick, what?
Yeah, his first name is Oil. Yeah.
Now, he funded a few missions, in fact. So he was a believer, to some extent, to investigate the Yeti reports. In 1959, supposed Yeti feces were collected, and I can say this on radio, by one of Slick's expeditions. Now, this is interesting. The fecal analysis found a parasite which could not be classified.
Oh, that's awesome.
So what do you say? Now, I say this. Now, this is coming from Mr. Bernard Heuvelman, who is a cryptozoologist, and he wrote this. Since each animal has its own parasites, this indicated that the host animal is an equally unknown animal, or likely to be an equally unknown animal, because, well, for most animals, we know they're parasites. We really do, right? Because that's what we do. That's what scientists do. We actually collect a lot of that matter and analyze it. So if there's an unknown parasite, then we can assume
it came from an unknown animal.
Potentially correct, right? I'm not saying that's the truth of it, but it's certainly a likely explanation. Interestingly, this is very interesting. In fact,
I like where this one goes.
The United States government, right, thought that finding the Yeti was likely enough to create 3 rules for American expeditions searching for it. Number 1, obtain a Nepalese permit. Number 2, do not harm the Yeti except in self-defense. And 3, let the Nepalese government approve any news reports on the animal's discovery. So now the United States government, which has done, by the way, the same thing for UFOs, okay, put laws into place and scenarios, thought it likely enough for Yeti to exist to create these rules. I mean, if you thought, well, it's such a harebrained scheme.
Turn it up, it's never going to be found, right? It's all fake.
Right? So why would you? You wouldn't. It's not going to happen. But what happened? Tell me, what happened in 1970?
1970. British mountaineer Don Williams claimed to have witnessed a creature when scaling... Oh, good on you.
Annapurna.
According to... I think I'm going to... Oh, that's Willens. While scouting for a campsite, he heard some odd cries, which his Sherpa guide attributed to a Yeti's call. I laugh because I heard the word Sherpa again. That night, he saw a dark shape moving near his camp. The next day, he observed a few human-like footprints in the snow, and that evening viewed with binoculars a bipedal ape-like creature for 20 minutes as it apparently searched for food not far from his camp. Huh. So I like that. Now there we go. We actually have a sighting. They're using binoculars, and for how long? It wasn't like 8 seconds, like a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot sighting. It was 20 minutes.
Yeah. Now, bear in mind that these guys that sight these creatures have only ridicule to look forward to.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay. So same as UFO sightings, same as Loch Ness Monster and all these wonderful things. Yeah. If you see it, chances are you won't talk about it, because people will most likely laugh at you. If only he had, back in 1970, the video camera would have been gigantic. So, if only, right?
It required a whole trailer and car to support it with batteries.
Yeah.
Look, this is a mountaineer. So, British mountaineer Don Willens. Think about this. He's been in the mountains before. He's seen this, and he hasn't seen one of those before. Watching something for 20 minutes, I think you get to know the creature pretty well. If you watch a squirrel, you'll understand its behavior pretty much after 20 minutes of watching it with a set of binoculars.
Yep, absolutely.
You'd be able to discern it from a raccoon, pretty much.
You'd hope so.
After 20 minutes. You would hope so, yeah, I know. Even though, and this is what most people claim, is that these people, they're not experts in the field. What do they know what a Yeti looks like? Since it's mythological, it could have been just a bear.
Yes. Must be a bear.
And because he's not a trained spotter, he doesn't know what he's looking at, they can easily dismiss it. But honestly, I argue that after 20 minutes, his description is great. A bipedal, ape-like creature that wasn't an ape.
Yep.
It would have been an ape. I saw an ape.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
Quite distinct from a bear Yeti-like creature. Okay, and
exactly.
If you, I mean, yeah. Now, in 1983, and then we're actually coming into the 21st century after this. There's some fascinating stuff there, by the way. In 1983, Himalayan conservationist Daniel Taylor and Himalayan natural historian Robert Fleming led a Yeti expedition into Nepal's Barun Valley. Okay? Now, this was chosen because in 1972, Cronin and McNeely allegedly found footprints there. So again, the interest is strong enough to fund expeditions, because this is not a place you go to just hop on a plane and off you go. Right? You have to plan to go into the Himalayas. Now, the Taylor-Fleming expedition also discovered similar Yeti-like footprints, same as Cronin and McNeely. And they appeared hominid with both a hallux and a bipedal gait. Now, this is a hallmark of the way we walk, to some extent. Mm-hmm. And they also discovered intriguing large nests in trees. Why is that important? Well, gorillas and orangutans and so forth actually build nests. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but large apes build nests in which they live. Certainly sleeping nests and so forth, right? They also received vivid reports from local villagers of two bears, Rukbalu, a tree bear, small, and Buibalu, a ground bear, weighing up to 400 pounds. Now, is it a bear or not? And this is interesting. Baloo, in fact, you will remember from the Jungle Book, is Mowgli's friend, Baloo, the bear. So, again, bears don't build nests. Okay, important distinction here as well. And the villagers may be talking about tree bears, and they may be talking about ground bears, but there may be other creatures involved here. So again, it's inconclusive. However, in the 21st century, and this is where it gets really interesting, guys, we come across a number of things that can't be explained, and we'll get to this in a second. In 2004, Henry G., the editor of the journal Nature, mentioned the Yeti as an example of a legend deserving further study, writing, "The discovery that Homo florensis survived until so very recently, in geological terms, makes it more likely that stories of other mythical, human-like creatures, such as Yetis, are founded on grains of truth. Now, cryptozoology, the study of such fabulous creatures, can come in from the cold." Now, cryptozoology is a study of animals that are either mythological or believed to not exist at all, or to be extinct, or whatever it might be. But having recently discovered all of these new creatures, and another strand, I guess, in the human evolutionary tree, or so we believe, has given credence to the cryptozoologists. Because all of a sudden, cryptozoology has become, oh yeah, no, there it is, it's real. Same with the coelacanth, and same with potentially the Mokele mbembe, which is potentially a surviving dinosaur in Africa. Anyway,
just to give some bit more info there, the florensis was found in Indonesia.
Indonesia, thank you, sir. Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah, that's right. Now, the Yeti is said to have been spotted in the remote Mae Charam area of Luang Prabang Range between the Thai Highlands and Sayan Yabuli Province, Laos. Okay, that's one of the sightings that was that happened. I think it was 2005 or 2006. A very recent. And again, don't forget, we are encroaching on these creatures' habitats now. The human population is growing. Now, I wouldn't be astonished if we started killing them without ever coming to news. You don't hear about every elephant that's killed. You don't hear about every tiger. So as people expand into these areas, chances are that they already have killed Yetis and Bigfoot. Quite potentially. But, guess what? It's not really newsworthy, because if you killed a rat or a rabbit in your backyard, would you tell anyone about it? No, because it's a common occurrence. So again, it's locality, it's the people that live there. I'm not saying they have killed them. I'm just saying if it did happen, it might not necessarily make the news. Now, what happened in early 2007, sir?
Let me have a look. I was just in the chat room,
Sorry,
so
dude.
you caught me a little bit off guard there. In early December 2007, American television presenter Joshua Gates and his team, Destination Truth, reported finding a series of footprints in the Everest region of Nepal resembling descriptions of a Yeti. Each of the footprints measured 33 centimeters, which is about 13 inches in length, with 5 toes that measured a total of 25 centimeters or 9.8 inches across. Casts were made of these prints for further research. The footprints were examined by Jeffrey Meldrum of Idaho State University, who believed them to be too morphologically accurate to be fake or man-made. So there's a lot of experts in the field, and I've seen a lot of documentaries based on how a foot should be made for the reason of propulsion forward. And if you're going to fake it, you'll really get it wrong. If you copy the human foot and expect it to take a load bigger than us, then you'll get it wrong. So I respect their point of view. Before changing his mind after making further investigations, so he said it was, of course, too accurate to be fake or man-made. Later in 2009, so 2 years later, Gates made another investigation during which he discovered hair samples. A forensic analysis concluded that the hair contained an unknown DNA sequence.
Aha!
So now we have hair, unknown DNA sequence. Guess what? What does that mean, Maggie?
It means we don't know! No, but that's the point, though. We don't know.
It means it's something else. Because we've, for all those people out there, we have computer programs right now that you can crunch up anything, freeze-dried it, crunch it up, like liquid nitrogen, crunch it up, put it in a machine, and it will sequence the DNA from the crunched up stuff that you've put in it.
Yep.
Right?
And that's the key thing. Right, Dave?
There's a database. Yeah, it knows it all. It doesn't matter whether it was my blood, your bad blood, some creature, even those, what were those single-celled creatures that are in soil deposits, Meki, in the flood myth.
Oh, yeah.
It finds those and can individualize those.
Correct.
As well. This is how expansive now our database is in DNA research. And I think this is very, very important to say, even with this, they couldn't find a DNA match.
Yeah, again, there's something there. As soon as you find something that is unknown, you must admit the possibility that it is something else. It is that simple. You must admit the possibility of the existence of Yeti, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever. And
we've already proved, even in tonight's show, if you only listen to this one for the first time, there have been creatures that have been found this century.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the last decade.
Yeah. Believed to be extinct for millions of years.
Even creatures we've never seen before, we're still discovering.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's parts of the world that we haven't even been to yet.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Now, and this is again, this is the key thing here, guys. Remember that we have not fully explored the Earth. We have not fully explored anything. We're just scratching the surface. Okay. Interestingly, in 2008, this is in October, a team of 7 Japanese adventurers photographed footprints which could allegedly have been made by a Yeti. The team's leader, Yoshiteru Takahashi, claims to have observed a Yeti on a 2003 expedition and is determined to capture the creature on film. So we've got people that are investing quite a good portion of their lives in the hunt. I don't mean hunt in a bad way. I guess in the discovery of these creatures. Bringing it to the world at large. Having said that, and I'm going to pose the question to you, Dave, as well. Would it be a good thing if we proved the existence of Yeti or Sasquatch or Bigfoot? Would it be a good thing if the world became aware of these creatures and goes, oh yeah, there they are? Because we haven't really done too well with the other creatures that we know about. You know what I mean?
We might be able to keep these ones alive.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, they must be smart to have evaded us for this long. And you see wild creatures very rarely. In fact, only if they want to be seen by you. They smell you. They hear you way before you smell or hear them. Okay? Their senses are a lot more acute than ours.
And we're walking into their environment.
Yes, sir.
Reminiscent of the, and I'm not putting Marines down, I swear, I promise you, but aftershave wearing, cigar smoking, Marines in a war, and you're downwind of them, you know where they are, you know who they are, right? So we don't think that we give off an odor, but clearly we do. We know that a dog can track us. Even a half a day behind us, they can still find us.
Make no mistake, we stink. Okay.
Yeah, we have a specific odor set. Yeah,
absolutely.
And we know that the wild creatures who have this, the full use of their DNA, will use urine and scratching and sounds and things like this to signal who they are and where they've been.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is common, guys. It's not like we were telling you something amazing. I mean, sharks can smell blood in the water at quite a distance away, right? Every creature, almost every creature, has got more acute senses than we do.
Yeah, I know. We're like toned down, and we've even talked about only being able to see such a minute part of the frequencies.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
We can't even see infrared. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could see infrared?
Oh, yeah.
We'd be the best hunters on the planet.
Absolutely. Again, infrared, guys, would appear as a heat signature, right?
Yeah.
So sensing heat. Ultraviolet, of course, would be cool as well. So we can do none of this. You're right, Dave. Our bandwidth of I guess, experienceable light is extremely limited. We're almost blind. If you look at the world, we should be carrying a handicap sticker, to be honest with you.
we should be.
Right?
No, I do not ever disagree with you.
Thank you, sir. Now, the next one, though, is controversial. In fact, Dave found the clipping for this as well. A Yeti was reportedly captured in Russia in December 2011, right, Dave? So, controversial, yes. We don't know, guys. What is your take on this, Dave? What do you think?
There's a lot of stuff that goes down in the world, and I think that this might be one of those things where they just let it out. They let it out in a little tiny news story at some point and go, well, 20 years down the track, we told you, by the way.
Yes.
And go, when?
Here it is.
20 years ago. Yeah, look, there's a story. It's all good, right? So this was one of those things, and they said that the stories suggest that there's, how many, 95%?
Well, they
sure?
Yeah, that's what they say. They're 95% sure that these creatures exist, based on the evidence that was, I guess, collected by these particular people. So, again, guys, I mean, Dave and I both firmly believe that the existence of these creatures is a very strong possibility. In fact, moving into the realm of certainty with the things that we've seen, with the reports. Again, don't ask your neighbor what he thinks, or she. Because it's irrelevant, okay? Ask them what they think about the TV show from last night if they watched it. Don't ask them what they think about Yeti. Don't ask the scientists sitting in some university what do you think about Yeti, because they don't know. They don't live there. They have not been there. And if they have been there, they haven't been there long enough. I know this sounds flippant, but the truth is, how many times... You live in Australia, right? So how many times have you actually come across a wombat? How many times have you seen a saltwater crocodile? Right?
None.
And how many times have you encountered a black mamba or brown snake, king brown, right?
Only once on my own block of land.
Right. So, but the point I'm trying to make is, even if you live...
But in the wild, Meki, none.
Right. So these creatures, all creatures tend to stay away from us. They don't want to be near us because we tend to kill them all. Okay? They
don't like my whippersnipper, I'll tell you that much.
Well, that's it. Now, creatures that have never come across a human being usually don't run away from us.
Mm-hmm. They'll watch and observe, and this is one of the things that the Squatch finders all say, that they're curious when they hear children laughing and playing.
Yeah.
And will come and observe and watch.
Yeah.
From a distance, not interfere, but just...
Yeah.
They're fascinated by it, and the way that we, teach our children things.
And this is really the key thing to take away, because we're almost running out of time here. We will drag this, like I said, we have to. We will drag it into next week, and we will also give you some possible explanations from the skeptics, which is fine. We'll discuss the Pangboshi hand, which may or may not be a hoax, and we will also go into more detail around Bigfoot, Alma, and Yahweh. But that's next week. But just a takeaway, though, guys. It is a very limited area we live in as human beings. And now there's 7 billion of us. I get that. But we don't listen to all 7 billion of us. We dismiss a whole bunch of people that are living near nature and are uneducated by our standards. And we say, oh yeah, their reports, they're obviously wrong. They're superstitious or whatever it might be. And we dismiss it out of hand. And only once a Western scientist, accredited scientist, or some kind of other expert or professional comes along and says, yes, it is so, will we also say, yay, it is so. And that's really the wrong attitude. Because the people that live near these phenomena, and I'm not just talking about Bigfoot here or Yeti, it's all of it. Right? It includes UFO sighting, it includes the Loch Ness Monster, it includes fairies and elves, it includes all kinds of things, right? That we just, or even the dinosaurs that potentially exist in the jungles. All of these things you can't have an opinion on unless you've been there and lived there for an appreciable amount of time to make your own observation. Otherwise, it's just blah, as far as I'm concerned, you know. And even other more, you know, erudite experts that haven't been there and have lived there, you know, just producing hot air when they voice opinions to the contrary. Go there.
Yes.
You know, I know it's hard to prove a negative. I get that, but you know, don't dismiss it nonetheless.
Yeah, look, it still takes me back to that poor lady who found evidence of the pre-Clovis people in the northern USA, and you know, she became a florist. Yeah, her work is used now. Her methods are used today. She was that smart, and she did things the right way. You know, by gridding off the dig and cataloging everything in a grid and the depth and all the layers. That wasn't done in the past. They just dug the whole site up and went, oh, let's sift it all. And where did that come from? Over there, somewhere, pointing roughly into the hole.
Yeah,
and that's what they used to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Whoa,
not
that was
anymore.
quick.
It certainly is.
See you next week, guys.
On another Shiny Side Out. Take care, guys. Okay, and we're clear.
Wow, that was fast.
It was a good show, man, today.
I reckon that was, but yeah, damn, it went quick, dude. I tell you.